We're back, and we're continuing conversation with one of our favorite regulars here at Securing America, Charles Sam Faddis, a career undercover clandestine Central Intelligence Agency officer, among many other things, who is these days one of the, well, leading edge of the efforts to protect our country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, notably outfits like the Revolutionary Communist Party of the USA, as well as against people who insist that the efforts that have been discerned now, I think unmistakably, in the 2020 election for the presidency, to subvert our free and fair electoral process, um, are now being buffeted, hopefully, by some significant pushback, including by patriots led by Sam Faddis in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Sam, tell us a little bit about what's preceded these latest developments in Pennsylvania, specifically the problems that the Commonwealth had in that 2020 election cycle, and what you and other patriots are trying to do about it now.
Well, so Pennsylvania, I mean, in a nutshell, Pennsylvania, like so many other states, moved in relatively recent history, to this mass market, no excuse mail in voting, which is a system. Maybe you don't have to believe in conspiracies, Bigfoot, Roswell, or anything else. Just have some common sense and look at this. It is filled with loopholes. It is unpoliceable. in, at the end of the day, in large measure, you have no idea where these ballots are coming from or who's casting them. That's the God's honest truth. One
Yeah.
tiny example. At the end of the 2020 election, the state of Pennsylvania counted up, obviously, the number of votes that had been cast, and then obviously the number of voters who cast those votes. I'm not a math whiz, but those two numbers need to be exactly the same because everybody votes once. In fact, they had over 200,000 more votes than they had voters who voted. This, according to
Wow.
a very detailed investigative report. So you got a massive issue. 200,000 votes came out of thin air. The margin of victory between Biden and Trump in Pennsylvania was roughly 80,000 votes. Huge deal. Nothing's ever been done about it. Nobody's fixed anything. The base of, if you will, the patriot movement has been demanding something be done. A lot of soothing noises, promises. Of course, nothing happens. A lot of smoke. So, now we have the patriot movement across the state. What's happening, which is who knows how many groups. At this point, you have a coalition of between 75 and 80 groups, depending on who joined earlier this morning, who have
Wow.
all come together and are saying, we're done waiting and we're demanding a return to in person voting. And they are
Mm.
beginning action statewide.
Let me just say that this question of the problems with mail in balloting didn't just arise in this election cycle, of course. There was a very prominent blue ribbon bipartisan commission, as I recall, back in 2005, I think it was, with
Correct.
former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State and Chief of Staff James Baker, who warned explicitly that this was fraught with vulnerabilities to fraud. Um, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania went through a number of shenanigans, I think it's fair to say, in the closing days of the 2020 election to not only institute that fraud prone arrangement under the guise that it was needed for COVID voting, but also in other ways, affronting the the laws of the Commonwealth, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, Sam. So there's a lot of reason for these patriots, as you say, to be very determined about getting back to a process that does have as its principal attribute that you can ensure quality control. You can make sure that people are voting one man, one vote, one time, as they say. in the case of this election cycle coming up. So, give us a sense of how this frustration is now being expressed and how it's being received by the authorities in the state of Pennsylvania. Do you think it will make a difference?
Well, it is already making a difference. Look, the key issue with the patriot movement in the state, and this is true all over the country, is you have lots and lots of groups, millions of people, and they act as independent tribes, if you will.
Mm.
That's what we have changed fundamentally in about the last 6 to 7 weeks in Pennsylvania, starting with a meeting that occurred in Allentown on 30 April, where we got all the leadership together. So we now have 75 plus groups acting in concert, and we are adding new groups every day, not only by standing up new groups, but by just folding existing groups in. And the first real action, if you will, beyond coming together, was just a few days ago, where Patriots went out in front of every legislative district office in the state of Pennsylvania. So every representative, every senator, with signs showing up demanding an immediate return to in-person voting, not vague assurances of anything. Take us back to the old system, with certain caveats. Absentee ballots for certain things would still be allowed. We're not disenfranchising people, but take us back to the old system.
Mhm.
I can guarantee you that got their attention. The majority leader of the Senate, Kim Ward, signed our Declaration of Election Integrity agreeing with that premise only a couple of days ago. Two
Wow.
or three of the other senior Republicans who have done nothing on this, like Bob Mensch and Dave Argyle, who are at the heart, they're the core of the leadership, have also signed in the last 48 hours. They
No
have
kidding.
immediate this bothered them a lot, that all of a sudden they saw these people have come together. What I keep telling them is, that's awesome. I mean, this is my message to Kim Ward and everybody. I'm glad you signed our declaration. We didn't come here to collect autographs. That's step one. Now what we need is a bill and repeal and take
Mhm.
us back. And what you saw on Tuesday, a few days ago, that in that isn't anything yet. The pressure will ramp up. You have a problem. All these people learn to work together now. And that's really what it is, right? It isn't me or any other single individual. They all put aside their differences and said, this is so big, we're going to come together. And it is gathering momentum in Pennsylvania. So it is a real sea change.
So, this is hugely exciting, Sam, and I want to commend you for, as always, your vision as well as your leadership in it. Uh, what are the prospects of a bill being actually advanced through the legislature? And uh, would they have the votes, do you anticipate, to overcome what I assume would be a veto by the governor?
Right. So the first thing to understand is the Republican Party controls both houses. So passing a bill is about 72 hours worth of work if they want to do it. In fact, they've admitted that to me talking face to face.
Mm.
Then we come to the issue of overriding the veto of Governor Wolf, who's a Democrat, and that is not insurmountable. When you look at the difference between the number of Republicans and what they need for the 2/3 majority, that comes down to some old school strong arming of some Democrats in some districts where they're not guaranteed reelection, and we could lean on them. So that is not impossible. They need to also, I mean, everybody needs to also understand that the candidate for governor now from the GOP is Doug Mastriano, who is very
Right.
much a grassroots guy too. He ran against the establishment. So if we get down to the part about 2/3 majority, you could be sitting there talking to some Democratic representative saying, listen, buddy, in a few months, you're going to have Doug Mastriano as governor, Republican majorities in both houses. You can get with us right now on
Right.
this, or your life could be very, very miserable in a few months.
Yeah. Your political life, of course. Sam Faddis, we have to leave it at that for the moment. Fascinating stuff on both the threat as well as some positive news on the home front. Thank you again for all you do. Come back to us with updates, if you would, very soon. Next up, we're going to speak with Chris Chmielewski of the Numbers USA about the invasion on our southern border and more right after this.